Hi, middle-aged gamers. Welcome back. It's me. If you're listening to a fan, I apologize. Antoine is not available. He's doing some sort of work thing today. We have lots of news going on. So today, Adam and I are going to talk about 3 stories each. Maybe something positive, but unfortunately, as we head towards the end of the year, there's a lot of unfortunate stories that do happen. But Adam, so tell us about the studio shutdown that we're going to be sad about, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, I don't know how many people are going to be sad about it. It wasn't exactly a smashing success, but Firewalk Studios, the creators of Concord, are closing down. And that is because, as everyone expected, Concord just up and failed. There was an internal email that was released by, I don't remember who did it. I think it was maybe the director or something like that. But he came out and directly said to all the employees, certain aspects of Concord were exceptional, but others did not land enough with players, and as a result, we took the game offline. We have spent considerable time these past few months exploring all our options. After much thought, we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I am a big believer in the benefits of embracing creative experimentation and developing new IP. However, growing through sustainable financials, especially in a challenged economic environment, is critical. So basically, he just came out and said, hey, you know what? I think it's great that people are innovating in games, but small problem, we need to make money. And if we don't do that, well, then it's kind of all for naught. So it's not only Firewalk Studio that is being shut down, though. It is also Neon Koi. And basically, in the same email, he said that in the case of Neon Koi, that, obviously PlayStation wants to expand into mobile gaming and that sort of thing too. But it is a new platform for Sony to be breaking into. And as such, there are going to be some growing pains. And if they can't create a product that doesn't live up to, if they can't create a product that lives up to Sony's standards in their bigger games, and that game cannot succeed, then, unfortunately, then that is not the direction to continue pushing in. So because of that, the studio is going to be shutting down. And this is among, quite a few studios that have shut down this year. Also, we've seen lots and lots of layoffs, especially as games have succeeded or not succeeded. I'm trying to think of some other examples. What was it? Suicide Squad? Didn't they have some layoffs? Or Rocksteady had some layoffs this year after that game didn't do so well. So it's been a pretty rough year. We've had a lot of great games coming out this year. So for a gamer, I think it's been a fantastic year. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the money isn't rolling in like it used to. And I don't know. I mean, I would assume that there's actually more money running in. I think it's just that budgets are just skyrocketing and just, income is not able to compete with that. And then the fact that you have a set number of players, there's only 7 billion, 7.4 billion, however many people on the planet, and only X number of those people are gamers. And those X number of people only live 24 hours a day. So there's only so much time in a day. And as gaming gets more lucrative, it's going to get more competitive because, again, supply and demand. The supply is going up, but the demand, I don't think, is growing quite at the same rate as the rate we're getting these games are, especially now that COVID is over and people just have less time. So unfortunately, it looks like the demand for gaming going down a little bit, not a whole lot. There's still a massive demand for it. But now people are just bringing the supply up and thinking, hey, I'm going a piece of that pie. We've seen a lot of live service games kind of fail for the same reason, where people are like, hey, I'm going to create this live service game. There's a lot of money in it. It's a huge pie. I'm going to make tons of money. And then it's like, well, yeah, but actually the pie itself didn't grow. We just cut it into more slices. So it would be impossible to get that Fortnite money out of it because, you're not creating a new market in the same way that they did. You're actually cutting into a market that already exists. So unfortunately, goodbye Firewalk Studio. I do not know what was going to be happening to other people within their the people that work for them. I don't know if they're going to be moved over into different divisions. I don't know if they're going to be laid off. But I think it's sad news. Even if you didn't like Concord, I think it's always sad when people lose their jobs. And I think it is kind of sad that in a way it fails. I understand a lot of people are going to be like, well, it sucked and it was a terrible game. And of course it failed. And yeah, I get that. But it's something that I hear other like movie buffs sometimes talk about how sometimes you just need to swing for the fences and you need to make a big attempt at something, and sometimes it succeeds and sometimes it fails. And hopefully this doesn't discourage developers from taking big chances. Hopefully this doesn't make them think, oh, I need to play it safer, because I think what we need less in gaming is safer gaming. We don't need more of the same. We need new ideas. So hopefully this does not discourage people from making attempts and trying new things. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. You know, we definitely need more new mechanics and stuff. And I think about Unknown 9, The Awakening, right, with their game mechanics. And Adam and I did Adam the review of Slitterhead, you know, yesterday and IGN was like, yeah, the mechanics are cool, but this game is not good. And again, that's just their opinion, of course. But that's, to me, like when I'm thinking about all the games coming out this year, I'm like, there is not a game that I want to play that has some amazing things. Probably the closest thing would have been Slitterhead, even though I dislike horror intensely, but I love new ways of doing things. And so, I mean, as for layoffs and the studio in Concord as well, I think it is really hard. Adam and I were also talking about this, you know, as much as quite a few indie studios have shut down this year, I think indie studios can definitely run a bit more flatter than your typical big corporate studio where you're paying them a big salary because they're working for Sony, they're working for, you know, this company or that company, right? So they're earning this big salary, plus they're having this, if they're in the US, right, they're having like a 401k matching, retirement and social security and all this sort of stuff. So the company is paying a fair bit of money for somebody to come into an office as well. And then if you're a remote worker, maybe that's a little bit less. I never realized how much salaries have changed since I worked for my quote-unquote first salary after college in Massachusetts, right? And things are expensive. And I mean, given inflation and stuff, so it's unfortunate. I was really hoping after Antoine reported that Concord might go free to play or someone else might, that would have been really fantastic. But shutting it down, it makes financial sense, but I think someone could have, like, what is that game? Epic redid this game called Paragon, right? Or they sold it to someone else, and they re-released the Paragon with all the assets and stuff into a new game. Not Epic, but somebody else did. So hopefully, I don't think Sony, Adam would know more of this, but like Sony's not in the, they're not in the game of selling their assets to other people to let them use it, I would imagine, right?
I have never seen it done.
Yeah, so I didn't think that was going to
so.
happen. So yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah, no, this, and talking about Slitterhead, it's kind of the guy who does it is, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's kind of known for taking these big risks and these big kind of chances. I mean, he did Silent Hill, which probably wasn't that big of a risk at the time. I mean, given the success of Resident Evil, but it was very different from Resident Evil. It was far less combat heavy. You were a little more helpless. It was a little more about the psychological side of it. But he's also the guy who did Gravity Rush, which was on the PlayStation Vita. And I mean, that's a game that I have never seen any game remotely like it. And granted, it was on the Vita, and then so that was part of the reason it wasn't super successful. They put it on the play. They did do a remaster, and they did Gravity Rush 2 on the PS4. And again, they were okay, but they weren't like super amazing. But it's one of these things where, you know, you'll get these kind of indie games that are kind of cult classics or, you know, indie darlings that a small group of people absolutely love and stand behind these games. But you know, they don't make the big bucks, and so people kind of shy away from them. I think Slitterhead is kind of in that same vein. Not that it'll necessarily be an indie darling or anything like that, but I think it's the kind of thing where, you know, he's kind of has this reputation for, hey, this is how everyone else is doing games. I don't want to do a game like somebody else. I want to do something very different and trying something new, and maybe it'll succeed and maybe it won't, but at least I'm trying something new. And I respect that, even if it doesn't make him a lot of money. I'm sure he gets paid just fine. But you know, he seems to bounce around from studio to studio. So I don't know how successful that is. But I like it when people take chances like that And yeah, I think it's like one thing I've seen a lot of people talking about this year is kind of the death of the AA studio and how we don't get so many of those. You know, when PlayStation started off, they just had so many like 𝙂𝙪𝙥 the Rappa or, you know, Patapon, Gravity Rush, you know, these sort of games. That was kind of how PlayStation got popular early on. I mean, some of those games like 𝙂𝙪𝙥 came later, but or not 𝙂𝙪𝙥, but Gravity Rush came later. But you know, that's kind of how they started, and it is kind of sad that they've gone kind of all in on this Last of Us style AAA big budget thing. You know, but I think the reason that they do that is because it just got to the point where, like, okay, if we're going to be doing these 𝙂𝙪𝙥 style games, we might get people that absolutely love it, and it might be popular within those small groups, but it's just not going to be a good return on investment. It's just, you know, you're just not going to get a whole lot of people. You're going to get a small group of people, you know, so if we're going to do it, we would have to make a really budget studio, and, you know, we're going to give them a very constrained amount of money, and we're like, you have to work within this budget. And I think a lot, it just makes it kind of really difficult for studios to kind of manage that, you know, our budget's limited, but we want to do this. So it's really hard for, cause like if you, like, for instance, what was it? Japan Studio, right? And they were working on things like The Last Guardian and stuff that are just very different, but just, you're not going to get the return on investment that you're going to get from like a, even something like Starfield or something like that, you know, some big budget game that, like a Bethesda game or something like that. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, like you, when you read the quote, right, it is a challenging, you know, global economic environment, and investors in these companies and in these studios are demanding more, like, hey, I funded you $500,000 or $1 million or $250,000 or $100,000. I want my money's worth. Like, what is my return? And am I going to get better than 3% or whatever the savings rate is in my country, or better than I'd get on the S&P 500 if I'm investing in the States? It's a difficult question. And I think if you're watching today's show after the fact, like a lot of you do, you'll realize that I think the big theme we're going to talk about today is studios and affordability and the gaming environment and what's coming in the future. And speaking of the future, so today I saw a story that you guys were looking for things that are happening next year. So get ready for 2025 as I talk to you about maybe 3 trends that I've seen, and possibly Adam will want to add 1 or 2 in, or 3 of his own if he wants as well. Please feel free to think about them, Adam. So the first trend has got to be handhelds. So this is something like, I know when I was playing I was doing the Nintendo Switch, and I remember talking to Antoine and Adam about this, and I'm like, you know what? I just love playing with my handheld, right? I love sitting down on the couch or in bed and gaming, and as much as I love this PC, as much as I love the hardware, there is nothing that beats this feeling. And I've seen this sort of increased adoption of handhelds on threads, on social media, or people sort of like, I saw a guy post him playing his ROG Ally under the bed while his wife slept next to him. So he's like, he took a picture of himself playing with his games under the bed because he didn't want the light to disturb his wife, and he was gaming at like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 at like 3 a.m. in the morning. But it's just, handhelds are just convenient. You can go big screen mode if you want. You can take them around to work. You can take them on the train. Speaking of old times, I remember I used to take an hour-and-a-half train from Worcester, Massachusetts to Boston, Massachusetts to go to work. And I could use that time for gaming, which would have been wonderful 20 years ago. And I mean, this is the wonderful thing. If I do go to France or next year when I go to South Africa, I will take my Steam Deck or my Nintendo Switch, and I will play as much as I can until I fall asleep on that playing. So consoles are definitely the future. That being said, right, moving into 2025, I think the things you want to keep a look out for, or if you're thinking about buying something right now and you can't wait, you want to look out for an Xbox handheld, which is still very much a big rumor about Microsoft coming up with their own handheld solution. You'll look for something else besides the PlayStation Portal, be it a PS Vita 2, possibly, hopefully, fingers crossed for Adam. Adam would love a PS Vita 2, I would imagine. Or no, and for definite, like you're gonna get the Switch 2 next year, as much as there was the big rumor last week or last week that Nintendo's gonna announce the Switch 2, and they never did. But for guaranteed, there's gonna be a Switch 2 next year. Go back and look at our old show. We talked about some of the specs there, which is like 4K, 1080p. You know, when you're handheld mode, that sort of stuff. So, you know, handhelds are definitely a thing that I'm only gonna see expand in terms of market. I would even say possibly in the future that we do away with big consoles like an Xbox, like a PlayStation, and that your next PlayStation handheld or your Xbox handheld will just be like what the Switch does, where when you do want to play on the big screen, you just dock it and dock. When you want to take it around with you, you take it around with you. And I'll let Adam talk about that later. My second thing I did want to talk about is AI integration. So when ChatGPT became famous, you know, everyone might have seen that YouTube video with someone, you know, they added ChatGPT into Lydia, and as you go around Skyrim, you know, and you can talk to Lydia about pretty much anything, and she will use ChatGPT to give you an answer in relation to Skyrim in most of the time, but sometimes she does sort of break out of the fourth wall, which is a phrase Adam taught me because I never knew what it was until this year. So I think, and I've talked about this in a sense on gaming, and like, you know, when it comes to live sims or farming games or even MMOs, right? Like NPCs have a very narrow spectrum of existence, and sometimes you're like, man, I wish this person was real, or I wish I could talk about anything, or I wish I could do blah blah with this NPC, right? And if you don't know, right, like with ChatGPT, you can make localized large language models, right? So you could say, hey, this is Lydia on Skyrim. These are all the things she needs to know, and maybe these are the extra things. And you could give her access to them and say, hey, there you go. And you have a more expansive model. In Coral Island, it would be nice to sort of escape from the typical dialogue that gets said all the time, even though that's a big step up from like Stardew Valley. So I can definitely see AI being used to sort of make games more realistic, more lively. Number three, I will say, is Kickstarter. As much as we talked about game closures, I see Kickstarter expanding next year as people from Firehawk quit, or people say, I don't want to work for Microsoft, or I don't want to work for Sony, or I don't want to work for Rocksteady Games, right? Like, I want to do my own thing. I have this amazing idea. I have the talent. I'm a programmer. I know a good artist. We're going to make our own game. We're going to put it on a Kickstarter. We have the reputation. We can say, hey, I worked at here, I worked at here, this is why you should support us. We'll ask for $50,000, $100,000, and we'll get it, and we'll make our game, and we'll sell it, and that'll be it, right? We're not paying rent for a studio, we're not paying large salaries for labor insurance. I want to say labor, no one knows what labor insurance is outside of Taiwan. For pension, or social security, or that sort of stuff, right? It's a much more flatter existence. And Adam mentioned the death of AA studios. I think it's gonna be, we're moving into a future in 2025, 2026, where the majority of the gaming market will be single A or AA studios. I would even throw out a number there of like 70%, and 30% will be AAA games. Just because, right, we're in an environment where you can fund the game that you like, right? You can fund the people that you believe in, and you have a choice, right? Whereas with a AAA game, you're like, am I going to roll the dice? Am I going to like this or not? And I'll talk about this later in my third story. But yeah, Adam, any predictions for next year? Or trends you've noticed for this year, I should say.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not a trendy person. I don't know. You can probably tell by my floral print Hawaiian shirt that I don't keep up with the latest trends and fashions. I'm not the best person to ask on that sort of thing. I don't really follow the crowd. I don't know. I just doesn't. My mind doesn't click that way. But working kind of backwards through what you were saying with Kickstarter, yeah, I think that that's definitely an interesting way forward. I think that also you might see like some studios doing, for example, Red Candle, the Taiwanese studio that did 9 Souls. When they did that, they did it through their own website. So you would actually go to their website and fund them directly through there rather than going through something like Kickstarter or whatnot. So we might start seeing more developers kind of creating their own funding pages and whatnot, just because they get a bigger kickback. I guess Kickstarter must take at least some percentage of the profit, for just having a web page up. But for that reason, and then also just because I don't know, maybe like you said with Kickstarter, it's kind of hit or miss whether a game actually ends up getting developed or not, or just kind of sits in development hell or just disappears. Maybe if you do it through your own site, maybe there's a little bit more accountability there. So I don't know. But also with bigger studios, I could see a bigger studio saying like, we already have a website. We have all this infrastructure. Why would we want to do it through Kickstarter? Let's just do it through ourselves, right? So I could definitely see that. And we'll get into a little bit more on that later. Moving up through AI, I kind of actually don't think we're going to be getting a lot of AI integration in terms of being able to talk to your characters and not because I don't think the technology's there or because people want it. I think it's actually the biggest obstacle is going to be like the Screen Actors Guild and that sort of thing. I mean, we saw like this year the voice actors went on strike because of the use of AI. And they're like, we don't want you being able to take our voice and just use it whenever you want. And if you have something like, say, Skyrim or Starfield, they were talking about like how many lines of text do we have and all this stuff. If you're an AI actor and you get a script for Elder Scrolls 6, it's going to be huge. You're going to have a lot of stuff to read. You're going to have a lot of work and you're going to get paid for all of it. Whereas if it's AI based, you're going to come in, you're going to read a few pages. How now, brown cow? She sells seashells by the seashore. And they're going to do that. They're going to analyze your voice, and then they're just going to use that for the entire script, which means you're going to be getting a lot less work, which means you're going to be getting a lot less pay. And then also the kind of ambiguity of, okay, well, we've recorded your voice for Elder Scrolls 6. What's the contract allow us to use your voice for whatever? Maybe we said, oh, well, we can't use it for other games. But is Elder Scrolls 7 another game? Is DLC another game? Or is that the same game? So I could just continue using your voice without paying you. So I think that's going to be the biggest obstacle is the human element and saying, where are we going to be getting these voices from and who's going to be getting credit for these voices? So I think that's going to be an obstacle that needs to be overcome before we're really going to start getting this integration of AI into conversations and stuff like that. Something like Stardew Valley that's text-based, you could do it today and it would be no problem whatsoever. I think that's entirely possible. But something like Skyrim or something like that, I think we have a little bit more ways to go, at least until we can start creating synthetic voices. And I think that's going to be a whole new can of worms when we open up the fact, like we have Vocaloids, right, that can sing songs and stuff like Hatsune Miku. If we, invest in that technology and you have these Vocaloids speaking in your games, that's going to be an entirely new can of worms. And I'm kind of interested and horrified at what kind of things we'll be seeing coming from that. But then working back forward into your handhelds thing, I would absolutely buy a PS Vita 2 if it came out. I don't think that Xbox and PlayStation will go the way of Switch. Xbox, I think, is pushing more for an entirely streaming device. So I think their goal is just to say, hey, we want you to just have like an Xbox app and just play it on your phone. And you could use any device that you want. We'll just get some clip-on controllers like what you can get with the Backbone or whatever it's called. And, just clip those onto the sides of your phone and play that way. Why do we need to invest in hardware at all? On the PlayStation end, I don't see them thinking, I see them saying that we want the most powerful that we can possibly make it. Most people are playing, at home on their TVs anyway, at least people that are playing PlayStation games. So, in order to get that, in order to get continue with these big budget games, we're going to want, something that can play them. I do see them moving more into PC, but I would not expect them to create a dockable solution. I don't see that happening, but could be wrong.
And so could I. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens next year. But interesting stuff happening so far in 2024. We're 2 months left of the year. Unfortunately, we have not only some sad news happening, but what happened?
Well, what's happening is probably the better way to say it. If you have heard of Aggro Crab, then you probably know, or maybe you haven't heard of them, but you might have heard of their most recent game, Another Crab's Treasure. This is their second game. Their first game was Going Under, which I played, and I absolutely loved Going Under. I thought it was a fantastic game, and I really hope that we get a sequel someday. I haven't played Another Crab's Treasure, but it is on Game Pass, so if you have Game Pass, you can play it there. And if you're on PlayStation, it's actually one of the games that you can buy with PlayStation Stars. So if you've been buying other games, you can pick this one up, for free. You've already spent all your money, but you can pick it up. And I'm very considering. That is not correct grammar. I am really considering making this my first purchase with PlayStation Stars. I haven't bought a game yet. I'm looking at what's up there, and this is the one that's currently the most appealing to me. But anyway, Aggro Crab, they've been doing a fantastic job. Both of their games are well loved. I mean, they might not be the biggest games in the world, but the people that do play them love them. You can tell that there's a lot of care and work put into these games. They're having a lot of fun. There's a lot of cheeky little humor. But unfortunately, it looks like they are having trouble funding their third game. So Aggro Crab recently posted on Twitter that our funding plans for Game 3 fell through. I guess 2024 is really taking no prisoners, but hey, interest rates are down. So if you represent an investor or publisher and want to help us make our game yet, our DMs are open. So it looks like they are having trouble finding money for their third game. Now, I don't really know what the situation is. I'm guessing that since they have only made 2 games and they are a relatively small studio, that probably they're not in a situation yet where the previous game is able to fund the next game. They obviously, the first game, that money needs to come from somewhere. That money was probably an investment from somebody else. They were able to make Going Under. It did fairly well, but it was a very small indie game, so it probably didn't get a lot of money back. So not enough to fund another game anyway. And then they released Another Crab's Treasure, which did fairly well. It's rated at very positive on Steam. It sold 100,000 copies in the first 4 days and 500,000 copies as of August 6th. So 500,000 copies, which isn't bad. I don't know how many of those copies are from Game Pass or from the PlayStation Stars, so I don't know how much they made off of those copies, or how much, or what the deal with the Xbox was. I don't know how much money they got from Xbox, but I'm assuming that mostly was going back into refilling the coffers from Another Crab's Treasure, or paying off parts of those loans. So now they're looking for game number 3, and they have done very well. They've proven themselves twice. I think that they definitely deserve a third chance. But unfortunately, they've been having trouble finding funding. Now, they did say it fell through, which I guess I saw somewhere that they had been that they had a deal with, was it Kakao Games? Is that the Chinese one or the Korean company?
Korean.
Yeah. So I think they had some investment from them. So I don't know if that was from earlier in this year or last year. So I don't know if that was the funding that backed out, or if that was the funding they received for Another Crab's Treasure. I'm not sure. But yeah, they need your funding. So get over there. Go over to Another Crab's Treasure. If you can fund them, please do. If you can't, hey, you know what? Just get the word out there. Retweet or whatever. Go on Threads, and spread the word that Another Crab's Treasure needs funding, because this is one of those studios that I personally feel does deserve more love. So yeah, get out there and vouch for the little guy. And who knows, maybe eventually they might do the Red Candle route and just create their own webpage and be like, hey, you know what? Let's just get you guys to fund us. Here's the deal. If you fund us, you can fund us at these tiers and you get these benefits and all that sort of thing. But they haven't announced what the next game is. They just say that they need funding for it. So I don't know if they're in the planning stages and they're like, well, there's no point in starting if we don't have any money. Or if it's the kind of thing where they do have an idea, they just don't have any money. I don't know what the situation is. So But very curious to see what they do next, because I am very satisfied with their work so far.
I just realized when you said Going Under, I was like, oh yeah, that's the game you streamed.
Yes, I did, and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. It was a great game.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that looks so familiar. And when you said Going Under, for something reason, I kept thinking of the game Going Over.
Oh yeah, it's a different game.
Yeah, it's a different game for some reason. But yeah, so I had to look at their website, right? And I'm like, okay, how big is Aggro Crab? And it's only 13 people. It's not large. I mean, definitely the definition of indie studios, and definitely very diverse, which is always nice. And I'll talk about that later. But even still, looking at their social media, YouTube, they had almost 113,000 followers. TikTok, 11.5 million likes. They did everything right on social. So to me, and you can jump in here, Adam, is I remember watching Switch Up, which is another YouTuber, which they do Switch games, right? And they talked about the Switch version of this, and they were like, yeah, it's fun, it's awesome. Maybe this makes me think then it's not a lack of marketing, because they definitely had the marketing presence, right? I checked TikTok, I checked YouTube. Definitely, it was out there, so people saw this. But it makes me think I feel like when it came out, there was other stuff coming out. Maybe it's one of those things where it does matter when your game comes out, because as much as you're going to generate marketing buzz around something, if you're generating it competing with an Apex Legends update or a Fortnite something or the other, right? Maybe you're just not going to sell anything. I don't know.
That's probably part of it. Yeah, the marketing was fantastic. They were right up there with, I think, probably the two best marketing teams I've seen were them and Cult of the Lambs. They were just they were on top. They were on spot. And the two of them would collaborate quite often as well, where you'd have Aggro Crab drawing a little picture of the crab and the lamb together, and then Cult of the Lamb would do a flip on it or something like that. So they definitely did some great marketing. Yeah, I don't really know what went wrong in terms of, why their funding isn't there. I think maybe the release timing wasn't great. I do think it is kind of, while it being a very good, I think this is kind of goes back to what I said with those AA studios, where it's this is it is kind of a swing for the fences game. I mean, one of the things that made this game really, and then these guys really do listen to their audience. One of the things was somebody suggested, hey, let's make a gun weapon. And they were like, yeah. So they put a gun in the game. So if the game is too hard, you can just give the crab a gun and shoot the enemies, which is an overpowered weapon because you're usually using, plastic sporks. So a gun is ridiculously powerful. And they were like, yeah, we'll put it in there because it's silly and we don't really care. It's, this isn't Dark Souls where it's oh, it's all about, bragging rights or whatever. It's no, just have fun with the game. Who cares? It's not that big of a deal. So, yeah, I think, I think maybe it's just, it is kind of niche. It is cutesy. And I think maybe it's just one of those things where, at a glance, people are like, oh, okay, it's just another one of those kind of cel-shaded Annapurna type things, So at a glance, you just might pass it over. But then when you actually look at it, you're like, wow, there's actually a lot here that's worth looking at. But it doesn't have the name brand recognition of Elden Ring or something like that. So, yeah, I think it's just unless you're somebody that's really into if you're somebody that's really into gaming, you've probably heard of it. But if you're just kind of a casual, play sometimes, or if you're parents, that don't really play, but your kids do, you've probably not heard of it. So I think that might be it. It's just not one of the biggest names out there. So.
Yeah, no, I think the word is definitely niche, and that sort of leads into my second story for today, which is what? And my second story for today, which is, have FPS games got you down? Are you disliking Counter-Strike or Apex or other games they're looking for something new? Well, I have a suggestion for you, a game released literally last week. It's called Sulfur, right? Just like the chemical compound. As of October 29th, it is released in early access by a developer and a publisher called Perfect Random. So again, we're on the indie track right here. This is their very first game because, you know, in Steam you can click on the developer's name, you can see all the games they released. I'm like, okay, these guys must have released other games, but no, this is definitely their first game. So the software looks very cool. It has a very interesting art style, and it reminds me of a game which I think we talked about the second game, but it was Void Bastards was a game, and they made a second game which came out earlier this year. That's sort of art style. Basically, what it is, right, is you descend the depths, right? An action adventure combining, so it's first-person shooting if you're watching the trailer, with sort of role-playing elements, and you make choices in order to survive, right? And there's like some cool inventory management stuff right there. It says plan ahead, outsmart enemies, and progress a world of dark creatures and cunning evil. Get to choose gear, right? So there's lots of different weapons. If you're watching the video, if you check out the Steam page, you've got choices in the way you want to fight, choices in the way you want to engage with enemies, and it's going through places, exploring. It's not all deep and dark, which is nice because I know some people like the early 90s or the 80s of like dungeon crawling, and you're in the same space all the time and just turn a wall and it's still the same wall out, right? No, this does have varied backgrounds, which is kind of nice. So there's some sort of adventure element, right, where you're looking for answers to some sort of puzzle. There looks like some sort of occult thing with like a pentagram and some sort of weird magic there. It looks cool. It is not very graphically demanding. So the minimum requirements are Windows 10, 8 gigabytes of RAM, a GTX 970, which is always good. But as usual, the requirements, if you want to run these games looking nicely, you know, you should definitely have a good computer. It retails for about, what would that be, like $15 US, a little bit under that. So it'll probably be $15 on the US store. It's slightly under $15 for the Taiwanese price. So again, I like games, especially with unique art styles. I love that they're doing things differently, and I love that it's sort of like simple but also complicated at the same time. Definitely a game to check out if you're looking, because I was thinking like I'm looking for an FPS game recently. This looks like something I might put on my wish list if I don't buy it today or sometime in the next few days, when I finally give in to my desire to keep adding games to the backlog when I already have too many.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Oh, okay, you're done. Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm like, is this a boomer shooter? It kind of looks like one, but it's definitely got a different aesthetic. It's very cute, but yeah, it definitely has that the do. I'm like looking at the guys, and I'm like, these enemies are two-dimensional figures. They are not three-dimensional. It's like, this is a Doom. This is a very modern version of Doom, but cute. Yeah. It looks really interesting.
Exactly, very cute.
Yeah. Like, this is interesting. Yeah, I might have to check this one out. Do you know how long it is?
Let me look at the early access. How's the full version planned? So, what is the current state of early access? They have 5 areas: cave, town, dungeon, castle. Each has unique enemy and challenges.
Okay, so still in early access.
Oh, okay. So they said the typical players have been playing the early access for 100 hours or so.
Okay.
So let's see. Looking here, we see a guide: 20 hours, 5 hours, 11 hours, 70 hours, 56 hours, 20 hours. So it looks about average. We're looking at about 20 hours for the early access version so far. I mean, again, it was only released like 5 days ago.
Oh, okay. Wait, 20 hours in 5 days? Oh my god. That's only 4 hours a day. Never mind, I can do that. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a lot. And then I'm like, oh, no. Wait, I put like 8 hours or so into the Monster Hunter beta, so I have no room to speak.
Oh, man. And the terrible thing is it only launches on PS5 next year.
That's okay. It's on PC. I have a PC. I'm on a PC right now, in fact. You guys might not know this, but I own a computer that I sometimes play on.
The original OG episode 1 Middle-aged gamers might have forgotten that you do have a nice computer now.
I do now. Yeah, my old one was it's still here. I told myself I was gonna repair it, and I never did. I should probably just recycle it at this point. You know, one of those things where you're like, I'm totally gonna do this, and then you just don't. The plans fall through, or you get lazy. Lazy is probably the more accurate way to put it. So.
Yes. No. I mean, my partner says that all the time. She's like, "Oh my God, you're so lazy for some things, and you're so hardworking for others." And I'm like, "Yes, some things I just don't want to do."
Mm. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna change the motherboard. I need to swap out the motherboard, and I need to swap out one other component, the processor, I think. And I was like, I can just swap those out, and then I can donate it. You know, donate it to. My wife has contact with they're like an Aboriginal village up in the mountains, and sometimes they, you know, we donate clothes or bikes or whatever to them. So I was like, we could donate a computer to them. I'm sure that would be really helpful. I should repair this thing, and then I just never did.
I totally get it. And speaking of things I also don't get, or totally get, is Mass Effect 5. And
what do you not to get? What is not to get about Mass Effect 5? It's Mass Effect. Everyone loves Mass Effect, right? Yeah, so Mass Effect 5 is now in full development. The only and if you are a Veilguard fan, that actually might be bad news, because the people at BioWare, I don't remember who exactly it was. Oh, actually, no, wait. I do know who exactly it was. It was Michael Gamble, the project manager, came out and said that they are now in full production on Mass Effect. They are going to be doing patches for Veilguard, but once those patches are done, it is full steam ahead, which means that there is not going to be any Veilguard DLC, and they have come out and confirmed there's not going to be any Veilguard DLC, which I'm sure a lot of people are disappointed at. Apparently, part of that decision, though, was because of Dragon Age Inquisition, where the actual end of the game was in the Trespasser DLC. So you had to get the DLC to finish the game, or at least get to the part where, you know, it's going to be carrying over into Veilguard, or, you know, the part where Solus is doing his thing. So all that was in a DLC. And a lot of people were not happy that the ending of the game was in DLC. For DLC, people want extra content. They don't want finished content or finishing content. And so because of that, they said, well, we're just going to put everything for the game in Veilguard itself, which means that we don't need DLC to finish the story. And since they did that, they're like, well, now we don't need DLC at all, because we're going to be doing Mass Effect 5. And they've also come out and said that, you know, with Dragon Age, you could get away with a kind of more cartoony art style, or at least they felt they could, which is why a lot of people have been describing it as Pixar-esque. I called it Fortnite-esque, but definitely the artistic style has changed from the more realistic style of previous Dragon Age games. And so a lot of people are concerned. They were saying, well, you did it with Dragon Age. Are you going to do that same thing with Mass Effect and kind of cartoonify it? And they came out and said, well, you know what? Mass Effect is a more mature series, which I don't think that's entirely true. Dragon Age was a mature series as well. But they said that Mass Effect is a more mature series, and as such, it's going to have a much more serious tone. It's not going to be so jokey. And because of it, to be able to tell that story, they do need to have a more photorealistic style. So they said the artistic direction of Mass Effect 5 will not change from the previous Mass Effects. They are going to continue with that more photorealistic style. So if you're into that, that's good news. A lot of people are concerned with some of the directions that Mass Effect 5 might be going in with Veilguard. For example, Veilguard had a lot of struggles. It was originally supposed to be Dreadwolf, and then at a certain point they said, hey, this is going to be a live service game. It's not going to be a traditional RPG. And then later on they said, oh, no, wait, you know, people don't like live service. Yes, we're going to make it a traditional RPG again, which might be part of the reason why your choices don't seem to matter as much in Veilguard. It might partially be because of that. It might be partially a carryover from the live service version, where they're thinking, you know, if we're going to be adding content, we can't allow players to diverge from each other too much, because that's going to be really, really hard, because that means with each DLC or with each new iteration, it's just getting wider and wider and wider. That was one of the reasons why Final Fantasy XIV said we're not adding new races, because every time you add a new race, you have to create armor for that race and customize it to their body shape, which means that, you know, you have to go back and it's not just new armor, you have to do it with all the old armor. So it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger each time. So they're like, all right, fine, we're not going to do that anymore. So yeah, so that might be part of the reason why Mass Effect choices, or not Mass Effect, why Dragon Age Veilguard choices do seem a bit condensed. But anyway, with Mass Effect, they're like, nope, it's going to be traditional style Mass Effect. It's going to have traditional style Mass Effect art. They say it's going to have a serious tone, and that's basically it. They haven't said anything else about it, so we don't know anything. But we do know that they are now fully focused on it, and that is going to be basically the only thing that they are going to be working on for the foreseeable future until it releases, which we don't know when that is either. But if you're a Mass Effect fan, that should be good news. So, also, I'm really curious as to which ending they're going to go with.
Yeah, Mass Effect. Oh God, I remember I played number 3, and I finished it. I don't remember what ending. I think because I never waited for like the patch or something. I think I only played it the first time. I remember you replayed 1, 2, and 3, right, with the Legendary Edition.
I didn't replay him. I played him for the first time.
Oh, you played him for the first time.
I played him for the first time right before Andromeda dropped. So I got the merge ending because I got to the end, and the way my thing was, okay, the one way you do it, you kill all. The one way you do it, you kill off all the artificial life in the universe, which would just destroy the Geth. And the other option was, I guess the other option is you destroy, you take over the Reapers, but the cycle continues? I don't remember what that one was. And then the third option was merge, you know, where artificial life and biological life kind of become one thing. And for me, I was like, okay, well, the obvious choice would be to destroy all artificial life, but, you know, that genocides the Geth. If the Geth are cool with it, if they're like, hey, you know what, it's for the greater good, we're willing to sacrifice ourselves, sure, I'll do it, but I feel like that was their choice to make, not my choice to make. So I was like, I can't kill off the Geth because, you know, if they're willing to sacrifice themselves, that's one thing, fine, whatever. You know, Eddie over here is one person, and I'm willing to sacrifice her because it's only one person, but I'm not willing to sacrifice an entire race. So I went with the merge ending. I went the green ending, I should say, because that's all that really changed, was everything was green, and people had little glowy things in their faces. Yeah, because the endings are so drastically different, I don't know that they have to commit to one on this one, so I'm curious as to which one they're going to commit to. And probably the Reapers are destroyed one would be my guess. Only because if you go with the Shepard controls the Reaper ending, it's kind of like, oh well, Reapers are still around. We can't really do much new because it's kind of the same old. Whereas kill the Reapers means we have to focus on an entirely new thing. So I would assume they would go with that one, and they're like, okay, we're gonna force ourselves to come up with an entirely new story. We can't lean on the old one anymore. Yeah, full production. Looking forward to it. I'll keep an eye on it. I was looking forward to Dreadwolf, and then saw that first trailer with Veilguard, and I saw how they had changed the gameplay, and I saw the new art direction, and I was kind of like, this doesn't look like it's for me anymore. And looking at how they handled choices, yeah, I don't think it's for me for Veilguard. As I was telling Korean on our line group, I said, you know, if you go to a steakhouse, you expect steak. If you go to a burger joint, you expect a burger. You know, when I go to Mass Effect, I expect to have those Renegade options. Or any BioWare, you know, I expect to have the Renegade options or the Paragon options. I expect to have a lot of control over what's going on and my decisions to really add weight. And looking at how they've kind of toned down that, I'd feel like I was going to a steakhouse and they were like, well, we don't do steak anymore, we do burgers. Kind of like, well, why did I come to this restaurant? You know, why am I here? So I think I'm going to skip on Veilguard, but hopefully Mass Effect will still be able to scratch that itch. So.
I mean, this sort of brings a question to my mind: is at some point, right, as a developer of a franchise, I mean, TV show or books or whatever, right? If you're looking to propel your studio or your franchise, your company into the next generation, right? Like making things for Gen Alpha or Gen Z, right? And you have to change the way things are done, right? And I think this is where I can't believe it. We're at that age where franchises and games that we hold dear now have to come to make a decision and say, hey,
old man shouts at cloud.
We have this IP, and now it's the time. And I think in the rare cases, right, but you can tell me if I'm wrong, and I can't believe I'm going to bring this up again, is maybe Final Fantasy or franchises like that are the only franchises that don't have to change because
Fantasy has changed so much. What are you talking about?
Okay, see,
they're the biggest change.
All right, so
they're not even turn-based anymore.
So I mean, maybe this is what happened with Dragon Age: The Veil of God, and on Adam's story, you know, is it's like I saw Veil of God, I'm like, okay, yes, it looks different. Yes, I remember watching the trailer, like, okay, this is really different, but at the same time, it's kind of good. Like, I don't think I have it in me to play that much turn-based anymore. I will go through like spades of a period of time where I'll be like, okay, I'll play turn-based games for like 3 months, and then I play the Atelier Ryza games. No, that's not turn-based though either. So no, that is a bad comparison. No, it has this like weird like action rhythm combat system with timing things, and it's not turn-based anymore. But yeah, like, but I'll do turn-based for certain things, but yeah, it's like people talk about like while we've had the competitors for Civ, like with our History Untold, and it's hard, it's difficult, and I don't know, like I don't know what you think. I think maybe it's now, again, coming back to the Kickstarter point, now comes the time where if you're a developer, you're like, little Johnny, who's 21 and just graduated from University of Virginia, has decided like, he doesn't like Civ, or he doesn't like Final Fantasy. Or I should say, he likes a new Final Fantasy, and this is what he likes, and all his friends like it, so this is the game that we're going to make. Maybe like Final Fantasy 16 as an example, right? And now the old way of doing Final Fantasy is gone out the window, because those are the guys who are going to buy our next 5 games or next 6 games, right? Until they hit that generational apex and like, okay, now we need to change again.
That happened to you too.
Oh yeah.
No, I think, for me, the thing is always naming. Naming for me is always, I don't know why. That seems to be my point. Like, for example, if you, to use an example we've talked about before, if you take The Little Mermaid and you change it up, I'm not going to be happy because you named it Little Mermaid. If you take the story of Romeo and Juliet, but you want to turn it into a musical, and you want to set it in the streets of New York or wherever, and you want to make it about like Cuban versus Puerto Rican gangs, if you call it Romeo and Juliet, I'm not going to be happy. You call it West Side Story, I'm like, this is fantastic, right? I mean, I'm not going to say that because I don't like musicals, but you know, I'm fully on board when you change the name of something. But if you keep the same name, it makes me so mad. I don't know why. I'm just weird that way. So I think, like, for example, when I was talking about with Final Fantasy 16, you know, you call it Final Fantasy 16, you make it this action game, and I'm kind of like, oh god, oh no, Final Fantasy 16, oh no. But you make Final Fantasy Strangers of Paradise, and then you make it like a Dark Souls, and I'm like, yeah, Final Fantasy is a Dark Souls? That's awesome, because it's not a number anymore, right? So I'm weird like that. Like, I'm all on board where if you want to change your franchise and branch out, just tweak the name a little bit. And then I'm like, okay, because like for me, again, it's that steakhouse mentality, right? I'm going to a steakhouse, I want a steak. I go to Final Fantasy, I see a number, I want something from that. And if it's not that, I'm like, oh, why did I come here? But, you know, if you're like, you know, Final Fantasy, not a number, then I'm like, oh, this is a new, okay, so this is like a spin-off chain. Oh, all right, let me try that. You know, like for another example would be Valkyria Chronicles. I love Valkyria Chronicles. It's fantastic. And then they had Valkyria Revolution. And Valkyria Revolution was not Valkyria Chronicles. And I knew it wasn't going to be Valkyria Chronicles. And But I was okay with that because it wasn't Valkyria Chronicles, it was Valkyria Revolutions. So because the name changed, even though it's set in a parallel universe or whatever, I'm on board. I'm fully on board with that. So I guess it's a little bit harder with something like Dragon Age because they don't have numbered entries in it, you know. So if I had been looking at Veilguard as, that's one thing that a lot of people are saying, that this feels like this is a great action game. It's not a great Dragon Age game in the sense that, like what I'm saying, right? If you're going into Dragon Age expecting these deep choices, expecting these really strong RPG elements, it's not that. But it is a great action game. You know, I like Stellar Blade, so would I like Veilguard on the same level that I like Stellar Blade? Probably, but because in my mind, you know, it's you know, but it's harder for them to do that because they don't have numbers, I guess. So maybe my mentality, I'm just looking at it from the wrong angle. Maybe if I was able to convince my brain that it's a different angle and this is not a main lane, this isn't a mainline Dragon Age. This is a Dragon Age spin-off. Maybe I'd be able to tolerate it. I don't know. I'm weird like that. It's a weird quirk of my brain, but I don't know.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that's also like a double-edged sword in the sense that when you do break away from naming conventions when it comes to a franchise, or maybe if it wasn't Dragon Age Veilguard, it was just called the Veilguard, right? Then
yeah, if it was like Veilguard, a Dragon Age game, or if they just called it the Veilguard, and they were saying in all the promotional material, this exists in the Dragon Age universe, I'd probably be way more on board with that. Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, oh sure, why not?
But I think, then again, you lose the connection with the franchise, and I think a lot of...
You get me, but you lose 50 other people.
Yeah, you get a lot of you know, business people like, hey, what are you doing? Like it's like if Pepsi made, or you know, Pepsi, and they were like, here's like, what did they call Pepsi in Taiwan? It's 𝙂𝙧𝙢𝙧𝙩, right? For some reason, I have no idea. Pepsi's not white, but if they imagine Pepsi went with English, white cola. Besides being a racist name in some ways, that would be pretty bad.
Some people would see it as racist. Other people would expect something like some kind of milky thing.
Probably.
Like, this isn't white. What are you talking? Red tea's not red. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's not connected to Pepsi at all. So I think that's the downside, is that people know, like, hey, Mass Effect 5 connected to the franchise. Okay, everyone who's ever played any Mass Effect will consider this game for at least some time. But when you break away from naming conventions, at the, you know, you like, you do bring in people like yourself. You do bring in other people. Definitely not only you who feels this way, for sure. I've seen that sentiment echoed on social media. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I kind of feel like the powers that be in gaming development, I would like, connection to the existing franchise is more important than starting something new. Or starting something new is too risky when they're doing their, what is it, like risk analysis or risk management framework. And like, nope, as much as we'd like to do this, we're not going to, because we need to have a return on this investment. As we've talked about this whole show, when it comes to getting your money back, you know, sustainable development of making a game, that sort of stuff.
Damn you financial statistics.
Yes. No, totally true, totally true. That's why we need like a Star Trek universe where money is not important. You just go to your Holler machine and says, make me a cup of coffee. And you don't have to worry about paying for it. You just pay for it in hydrogen energy or whatever they use back in Star Trek.
Someday.
Nice. I think I'm going to skip my last story for time's sake.
Oh no, that was the big one.
I might record that on my own, actually. We'll see.
Sure.
Yes, I was going to say, nice going on the Project Zomboid videos, by the way. So if you guys don't know, if you're looking for somebody new to watch on Project Zomboid, you should definitely check out Adam's streams.
I didn't stream last time. It's Halloween's over. I can if people want me to, I can continue to stream it. But I played Stonefly yesterday.
I did see you stream something different. I was like, man, I need to click and watch what that is, but I don't know what I was doing yesterday. Yes.
I can go back.
Yeah. No. Go with Stonefly, see how it does, because one thing I did notice is like your Project Zomboid, I don't know if it's people in the actual live stream or again after the fact, they were hitting 30. Each of your live streams did better than the last few weekly quests, to put that in perspective.
I don't think they were watching it live.
Okay, so yeah, people watching it after the fact, they liked it.
All right, well, maybe I'll continue with that then.
Yeah, no. I mean, totally up to you.
Stonefly tomorrow, and then Friday should be Slitterhead. But if you guys want me to do...
No, do Slitterhead.
Oh, I'm going to do Slitterhead. I'm just saying, if people want me to continue with Project Zomboid, I can do 1 or 2 days a week for Project Zomboid, Slitterhead the other day, or other 2 days a week. I can do that.
Yeah,
What do
show
you
the...
want? Let us know in the comments.
Yes, or jump onto Discord and let us know as well.
Jump into Discord. The link is down below. Not right now.
Yes.
It'll cycle through. Give it a few seconds.
Very cool. Yeah, no, because I'm looking forward to seeing Slitterhead, and hopefully it'll be prototype-ish in the sense that it won't be that violent, but at the same time, the mechanics will be fun enough that I can skip the horror aspect.
From what I've been reading of reviews, the story is very disjointed and doesn't make a lot of sense.
Oh, so that's fine with me, because I don't care about story. I just want to play the mechanics.
I'm looking forward to it. I've heard some bad things, so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll like it. Maybe it's good. I do like the guy who developed it, and he does swing for the fence.
Did you pre-order it?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm not Antoine. I pre-order stuff.
Hopefully Antoine's not watching this. I apologize for the burn.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's not a burn. He doesn't like pre-ordering it. That's fine. I pre-order. He doesn't. There's nothing. It's not a burn. It's just a habit. Yeah.
Just a fact.
I mean,
yes.
if Antoine was here, I'm pretty sure he would also be telling us no politics on your final content. But you're not doing that anyway, so it's
no,
moot.
I'm not. It's moot. Exactly. Cool. All right. Then thank you everyone for tuning in as always. Hope you enjoyed today's show and the news stories. If you have any comments about something we talked about, don't forget to comment down below. And then we will see you next week, Tuesday, Monday evening in the US. A quick note is potentially we might have Adam join us when he's on vacation in the US after December 15th. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out.
Talk to my wife. She's like, yeah, bring the laptop, bring your headphones. You can do it in the States. Who cares? Just do it in the evening.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, so I guess this is confirmed. We will see you then.
I mean, it's confirmed-ish. 90% sure? You never know what's going to happen. My family might be like,
what are you doing? Why aren't you spending time with us? You come all the way over here and you just sit on your computer with your friends.
So, who knows? It's a possibility. I'm not mimicking any particular person in my family, but that's how they sound in my head.
All right, so 90% chance that, or 10% chance that it'll just be Antoine and myself for the end of December. And a 90% chance it's going to be the three of us as usual. We actually should talk online about planning what we're going to do, like a prediction show or Game of the Year show, the usual stuff that we'd like to do end of the year. And then, with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in for this past hour, and then we will see you next week.
Catch you later.